having me on. Pretty good. Hi everyone. I am Joe Spierer. I am an architect. I have an architecture firm in Redondo Beach. Sophia, who you see on the call here, she is one of the architects in the firm. So there are 14 of us. We specialize in high-end custom single-family residential architecture, and we design homes all up and down the coast of the South Bay is probably about 60% of our work, and then 40% of our work is beyond. So up to, of course, the Palisades, Santa Monica, um, different parts of LA, Malibu, that sort of thing. So today, what I am here to talk to you all about is about rebuilding, right? So basically, the fires in the Palisades and in Altadena decimated thousands of homes. And a lot of people are curious as to what they can do in order to rebuild. We've been reached out to from lots of people who have been affected, and we just want to be as helpful as we possibly can for people that are affected by this. So let me start here with this first slide. So where do I start? Okay, this is the first question, of course, is how do I begin? And filing an insurance claim immediately is really important. Just starting with making sure that that happens is the first thing that needs to happen. So people that got in quickly have already been paid out. People that took their time are basically getting responded to more slowly. And then I would say, assessors' questions are a lot of questions that people have. How am I going to get reassessed, right? Am I going to get reassessed? And the answer is if you follow a few rules, you won't get reassessed. So normally when you build a new home, the county says, oh, well, there's a new improvement here. We're going to charge you more in taxes. But with a misfortune and calamity claim form, they will allow you to keep your original basis, even if you're putting a brand new house on the lot. But you have to have been affected by the fire. You can also postpone your property tax bill into next year. Everything's got to be cleaned up. So there are two phases of cleanup. One is a toxic cleanup phase, which is done by the government. And the second phase is cleaning up all the rest of the debris. And that can either be done by the government or by your own hired person. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And then you have erosion control, making sure that there's no landslide issues which has already started to happen with the rains. People's lots are sliding into other lots at this point. And then temporary housing is allowed. So you can have a mobile home, you can have basically a mobile structure, but that's temporary. They'll eventually require that you have a real house on the lot. So who do I call to start? Insurance agent is, of course, number one, your mortgage professional, your CPA to find out how does this affect my taxes, and then discuss the following with your architect: budget, timeline, and scope. And then things to consider are incentives to rebuild the way that it was before. There are big incentives as opposed to building something bigger or different or in a different location. What type of overlays are you in? Coastal zone and specific overlays, and then what do you want? And we'll talk more in depth about all these. So here's the state response. The state has stepped in and said that if you rebuild within 110% of the original size, the original approved size of what your home looked like before, then you can avoid the California Coastal Commission. It's a big deal. It's about 5 months off. So that is a big deal. And then California Environmental Quality Act, you can avoid that as well. So you get to skip out on both of those things. And you also might be able to transfer your basis, your tax basis, to your newly rebuilt replacement property. And then you have basically the state has also authorized FEMA and the EPA to begin hazardous waste removal. So they're already on that. Some of that's complete. And then non-architecturally, anti-gouging rules are extended. Late payments for 2025 are non-existent. So you won't have to pay any property tax late fees until, or you won't have to pay any property taxes until 2026, right? So that's a good thing for people who are affected. It also bans, this affects realtors directly. It bans unsolicited offers to owners of damaged properties for amounts less than the market value. So you can't go out and cold call someone who's affected by the fires and offer them less than market value. So cold calling them in general is dangerous with something like this, with anti-gouging laws. So if you are going to do it, you have to make sure you're paying at least market. That's a hard thing to call too. So the city of Los Angeles has also had a big response. Remember, the state says that within 110%, you get some benefits. The city of Los Angeles has also said that within 110%, if you keep the building within 100%, 110% of the previous area and height, that you don't have to do a whole bunch of stuff that you'd have to do before. As long as it is the same use, substantially the same location, and the same density. So what that means is you can't add another unit, can't add an ADU while you're rebuilding. You'd have to do that in a separate later application, not in, you can't double the amount of units that you have on your property in order to get these benefits. Okay. So also reviews for projects up to 110%. The city has said will take only 30 days. I'll believe that when I see it, because if you look at what happened with the ADU laws, they said that with ADUs that they would get back to you within 60 days, and that is out the window. None of the cities are following that at all, and I would imagine that the city of Los Angeles isn't going to be able to keep up with this. And then you have lots of different requirements that are lifted, haul routes. So in Palisades, before the requirement was that you had to pick your route that all the trucks would take to deliver materials and construction crews and things like that to your lot, the actual physical route that they'd have to take. That takes 9 months for approval, which is crazy. But that's removed too. So you don't have to do that if you're rebuilding within 110%. Departments have to respond within 5 days. There's going to be a disaster recovery permit center that will expedite a lot of these things. So it'll make these things happen more quickly. At least that's what they say they're trying to do. Los Angeles requires that all new homes be electrified, basically only electric. You can't have gas ranges anymore. But if you're rebuilding, they're allowing you to keep your gas hookups. So that's a benefit. Cities will still require architects and engineers and soils testing, and they might allow self-certification of drawings, meaning that we don't have to get approvals from the city anymore, that we could approve our own drawings for construction. And I don't know if they're going to do that. They say they're going to do that, but I have a feeling they're going to remove that later. The requirement is also that in order to get all these benefits, that you have to obtain permits within 7 years, and you have to finish constructing within 3 years of getting your permit. How much is all this going to cost, right? So this is just general costs for construction in the Palisades, for example, and up in other areas of the South Bay, right? So like Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, Palos Verdes. It's about $700 a foot to build right now on average. You can build for $600 a foot. It's possible to build for $500, but very difficult and not guaranteed. So really, it's about $600 to $700 per square foot for new construction at the moment. And then, of course, you still have all of your other soft costs. The real question is, should we wait until costs stabilize? Prices are going to go up. Should I rebuild now or should I wait 10 years? And the answer is it's going to cost more to build in 10 years. If you look at this chart here, since 2012, prices have been climbing, and every time there's some big public issue, people say, "Oh, prices are artificially inflated; they're going to come down." But the reality is, they never come down. They always just keep going up. Now, it's not to say that it'll always be that way, but in the foreseeable future, especially with inflation, I don't see construction costs going down anytime soon. So, timeline, how long does it take to get something done? Before all of this happened, right? Before all of this happened, your typical timeline was 15 to 22 months, right? This was 2 to 4 weeks to get a survey, 3 to 4 months to design and get things documented for permitting, 6 months for discretionary permits. These are additional layers that the cities layer onto your requirements, depending on what jurisdiction you're in. 1 to 2 months for engineering, and then 4 to 9 months for building and safety review. So 15 to 22 months for a normal timeline just to get a permit from design to permit. Now, with the rebuild, they're saying that they're going to cut out a bunch of this stuff, right? So, for example, if you're rebuilding and you already have a survey, you don't have to have your survey. You also don't really have to have your discretionary permits. So you basically cut out a lot of time there, according to what the city says. Now, with that being said, is that actually going to happen? Is the city actually going to be able to keep up with all of their additional applications that are coming in? Are they going to be able to staff up like they think they're going to? I don't think so. I think that there are going to be a lot of backlogs, and it's going to take a long time to get through. So even though 8 to 15 months is what it should take with everything cut out, I think it's going to be longer. And of course, if you rebuild with a brand new design, so you're not complying with the 110% rule that we talked about earlier, you're looking at basically the same as it would take to build normally, except this is probably plussed because of all of the issues that the city is going to have in making sure things are expedited. And how do I know this? Okay. There was a Woolsey fire. The Woolsey fire back in 2018. This was in Malibu. 500 homes burned down. It was only 500 homes burned down, not the 2,000 to 3,000 homes that burned down this time. 500 homes burned down, and basically it's been 7 years, and there are less than 300 permits issued, and only 182 homes have been completed. So 182 out of 500. That is not a great ratio of what has been rebuilt. Here's a random snapshot in the Palisades. 2019, you can see the debris here from homes that burned down. And then this is today. So you can see the green ones are the ones that were rebuilt, and the red ones were the ones that were not rebuilt. And I could take 50 snapshots of random places from the Woolsey fire and show you that the things aren't getting rebuilt like people thought they were going to. And also in the Woolsey fire, they made the same changes. They said fee waivers for 110% of the home size. And they said that you get a lot of benefits if you keep it within 110%. And CEQA and California Coastal Commission were also canceled. You don't have to go through those. And they also they created a separate response team for planning and building and safety departments. But at the end of the day, it still wasn't enough, right? It still inundated the localities with too many applications, and they weren't able to respond quickly enough. And then, of course, you had a bunch of people who didn't want to rebuild. They just wanted to leave. Altadena basically has a different situation. Instead of dealing with the city of Los Angeles, they're dealing with the county of Los Angeles from a building and safety department. Their county is even more difficult than the city of Los Angeles. permits from. There are two phases of removal from for debris, right? Phase one is basically the county has said that the EPA is going to come in and deal with all the toxic materials that need to be taken out. And that has already happened for the most part. Phase two is all of the non-toxic materials, and you have options. So the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers does phase two debris removal. And basically, you have to fill out forms in order to make sure that this happens properly. And in order to avoid paying for private cleanup, which can be very expensive. Private cleanup for phase two removal, if you do it yourself, is $127,000, but it's at no cost to the owner if they have the Army Corps of Engineers do it. But if you get insurance to clean up, you have to give that to the government if the government is cleaning up. And then, of course, the federal workers aim to clear 75% of debris by June 30th. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's their goal. Very high fire hazard zones are all over the place. So this is a map. The red shows where these zones are. The question is, am I protected in my current home? Okay. And if you're in one of these zones, you can see our little Palos Verdes right here, right? But if you're in one of these zones, you are in a very high fire hazard zone, meaning you could burn up at any moment. Okay. And that's basic. And this is accurate, right? You see where the fires occurred, and it's all within these zones here. Basically every few years, they come up with more fire requirements to prevent homes from burning down. And if you look at homes that were built before 1993, okay, homes that were built before 1993, those on average burnt down more quickly and more easily, and there were more of them gone than homes that were built after these very high fire hazard zones were created. So basically, there are automatically more things that are done to these new homes to make them more fire resistant. Plus, there are, of course, more things you can do. But these zones have made it so that people in these areas are more protected than they used to be. Here's some of the, so basically, am I protected if I rebuild? So a lot of people are concerned that if they rebuild, that their house is going to burn down again. And while you can never be 100% sure that things are going to be okay, there are lots of things that can prevent your home from burning down. We designed two homes in the Palisades, and both of them are standing because of two things. One, the new requirements, and two, we were pretty proactive about making sure that it was fire resistant. The materials make a big difference. So Class A roofing is important. You have eaves and soffits, and I'm going to show you some pictures of some of this stuff as we go on here. But eaves and soffits need to be protected. Exterior walls need to be protected. Doors, garage doors, decking. You're not allowed to have a wood deck within 10 feet of your home in a very high fire hazard zone. And I know you see a lot of them. You see a lot of wood decks attached to houses. They're not allowed to be there in a very high fire hazard zone. You have to use an alternative material. Cantilever overhang elements like trellises can't have vines on them. They have to be made out of heavy timber. Crawl spaces have to be enclosed or ignition resistant. Other measures are glass has to be tempered, screens and gutters, and lots of different spark arresting screens need to be in place. And then if you're building a new home, you have to create what's called a fuel modification plan, which is a landscape plan that shows where plants need to be strategically to not add to the fire issue. And then you have to maintain brush clearance. So here's an example of Class A roofing. Class A roofing, this is, the bottom one is not. This is wood shake, and this would go up like a candle. But the top one is, this is clay tile, which is very fire resistant, but you have to make sure that these cavities are filled because sparks can go up inside of your roof here. And so you have to make sure that these are plugged up. So if you ever go around Palos Verdes, for example, you'll see some of these are open, but most of them have been plugged up at this point, especially on new construction. Here's what can happen. So basically, because of the shape of the roof, it acts as like a sail, and sparks fly up into the roof and can cause fires. So plugging them up is important. Also, screens. These are called spark arresting screens. And you can see that this screen is very tight, so sparks have a hard time getting through screens that are that tight. So that's for any vents, any ventilation from the outside of the house. Your gutters, okay? So these screens that are on gutters not only prevent leaves from clogging up your drain, but they also prevent more fuel for a fire. If you can see here, you have tons of leaves that are just piling in here that are highly combustible, and that's a good way to get fire coming up inside your roof. So doing screens like this is an important thing to do. Also for chimneys, you see this a lot where you have fire that can, or sparks that can escape out of a chimney. What this does, this is a spark arrestor, and it prevents the sparks from leaving the leaving the chimney. So exterior walls, you're not allowed to have wood siding anymore. You have to have what's called a composite material if you want siding. So the composite material is called cementitious fiberboard, and it's essentially compacted wood pulp with cement mixed in. So it's a cement product, and this is very hard to burn through. And that whenever you see a new home that looks like it's wood siding, it's really not if it's in a very high fire hazard zone. Doors have to be 20-minute doors. So it's all about delaying how long it takes for fire to get into the house. There's no material that's perfect from a fire perspective. Even concrete, if exposed to enough heat, will crumble and be destroyed. So the idea is to postpone how long it takes for fire to get into the house so that people can come up and so that the fire department can come up and help you, right? And basically, so doors have to be 20-minute doors. Fire takes 20 minutes to get in. And then you have glass is double pane now. One of those panes has to be tempered in a fire hazard zone. And then windows, at least one. Yeah, so this is what I just talked about here. The glass has to be tempered to prevent fire from coming in. And then basically any decks have to be within 10 feet, have to be non-combustible. So this is called, this is a composite material as well. This is not wood. It's not real wood here. And then you have to create a defensible space around your home. So this image here shows what it is that you could do, 30 feet around your home. You should basically have almost no fuel for a fire. 70 feet or to the property line, you want to make sure that trees are spaced correctly, and you want to maintain fire-resistant trees. Things like all the cypress that you see in, let's see, let me go back to this. Eucalyptus, sorry, not cypress. All of the eucalyptus that you see, they're like candles, and they're all over Palos Verdes, and they go up very quickly. So removing limbs within 5 feet of a structure and 10 feet of a chimney outlet is important. You want to avoid vines climbing up. These are all rules for very high fire hazard zones, but recommended for everywhere else on the planet. So dead vegetation within 110% of structure, fuel ladders, which is this here, where you want to make sure that you don't want a shrub growing up so that it's almost connected to a tree, because then if a fire starts here, right, if your fire starts on the bush, it's going to connect to the tree as well. That's called a fuel ladder, and you don't want any of that happening. And then this is a list of plants to remove or reduce as much as humanly possible, just because they go up very quickly in flames. And then There's rules for hedges and leaving perimeters and shrubs, that sort of thing. So that's the end of the presentation. Do you guys have any questions for me? I'd love to answer anything that's on your mind, if it has to do with fire or anything else. Happy to chat with you guys. Carrie, are you raising your hand? No, you're just adjusting your camera.
Just feel free to unmute yourself so you can ask a question.
All right, well, if there are no questions, then feel free to email me if you have anything that you want to talk about. I'm more than happy to chat about anything, not just this. We have lots of information on lots of other subjects, or if you need anyone to look into a property for you, we're happy to help. We offer a service called pre-design, and pre-design occurs during your inspection contingency period of your escrow. So if you have a lot and you're not sure what can be done with it, then we provide a service that helps you figure out what can or cannot be done on that lot. And we're happy to offer that to you guys. All right, with no questions, thank you all very much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and feel free to reach out anytime.
All right. Thank you, Joe. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you. Take care.